Hey guys, let's start with special episode chapter of Loyalpin Volume 2, Her Royal Highness. If I were to define my life in one sentence, I would like to describe my life as a life of good deeds covered by karma. Those good deeds due to my birth are considered very noble. My name is Her Royal Highness Princess Arphanumas, or I was called in the palace Princess M. As for the karma, it came from my physical health, which is considered weak, so calling it 3 days good and 4 days sick would not be very wrong. I have a lung disease that I was born with. The other conditions that plagued me caused the royal doctor to go in and out of the central palace that was my residence. That I even once persuaded myself to change the name from Central Palace to Central Hospital so that the matter would be gone entirely. My life is considered half dead, half alive, has always been like that. My mother Erb, the royal concubine, seeing me so weak, went around and conscripted several young women from the royal families who had volunteered to work alongside the royal prince in the main palace to come and take care of me at the central palace. Among them was a young girl whose I recognized her face before anyone else. She is princess from the Cassadet family, raised as the adopted daughter of the Saftarat family. What's your name? I asked her on the first day that Princess Yon brought her in to meet me, but she raised her eyes and looked at my face momentarily before repeating the question as if she hadn't been paying attention just now. Excuse me? Her Highness asked what's your name is. Princess Yuan turned to make a sullen face at the young girl, probably not as satisfied. Your Highness, the young girl said, bowing down at my feet. My name is Padmika, Your Highness. That's a beautiful name. Thank you, Your Highness. The girl was still crouched like that, refusing to look up and make eye contact. I was annoyed at how strict she was, supposed to be in her customs, so I teasingly spoke up. Please lift your head and look at each other. Maypad, talk to me nicely. Don't talk to my feet like that. Please forgive me, Your Highness. Even so, the young girl kept glancing at my ankles. It took a long time before she lifted her head and stared at me. Besides Maypad having a slender shape, her skin is smooth and refined. She also has a beautiful face, shiny black hair, sharp dark eyes, and a prominent nose bridge. Her lips are fragile. Overall, she looks stunning as a queen, like I had never seen before. Did you see clearly with your eyes? I said in a laughing tone. I'm an ordinary person, not a devil or giant. It's isn't like that, Your Highness. The girl averted her eyes. I just don't know what the custom for entering the grand place are, Your Highness. What should be done or shouldn't be done, ma'am? She turned to look at Princess Yon, who secretly let out a long sigh with consideration. Please make yourself comfortable, I said, leaning my side against a large cushion exhaustedly. Isn't your adoptive brother also the king? Just act with me in the same way. I hate formalities the most. Keep this in mind. I hadn't finished speaking and had to pick up the handkerchief from the bag of my strong on my waist to cover my lips. I started with a slight cough before continuing to undulate without stopping. Please take the teapot and the medicine on the table at that corner. Whenever Her Highness coughs, if you give her a sip of the liquid medicine, she will feel better. I sat still and listened as Princess Yon turned to give commands to new girl, like Princess Padmika, with an interest. Her behavior, whether she stood up, sat down, walked around until she answered the command, seemed to be slow and gentle, very pleasing to the eye. I was holding back a cough when Maypad brought a cup of tea and liquid medicine and placed them in front of me before carefully pouring the liquid medicine into a clear glass with lines indicating the volume. She stopped pouring, according to the line informed by Princess Yon. She handed me a glass of medicine and doubtfully looked at me with sharp eyes. I took medicine and took small sips before handing back the empty glass with a dry smile like that of a sick person. Nevertheless, in return, I received the bright smile of the young girl. Beautiful smile, I praised in a soft voice. Excuse me? It was as if her ears had not been able to hear anything since a moment ago. You have a beautiful smile. I reached out and picked up the teacup that she had poured and handed it to me to sip and taste. Smile often? Yes, Your Highness. She accepted the words but immediately looked down at her knees, which seemed to contradict my orders that I couldn't tell. From now on, your duty will be to serve me closely. Whenever I desire, you must provide for me, always following up when I go out or to the main palace. Before bed, you must read a book to me until I fall asleep. After that, you can return to the room or put the mattress next to my bed. It's up to you. I understand, Your Highness. Once again, the young girl bent down and prostrate at my feet like that. If you understand, please raise your face. At this time, I couldn't stand it so much that I had to bend down to raise the young girl's shoulders by my two hands so that she could sit upright and make eye contact with me. Her eyes widened as if she was shocked. Please, raise your head and smile. Don't keep your head down and prostrate like that, my dear. Now this is POV of Princess Padmika. Maypad? Yes, Your Highness. I hurriedly answered as soon as my ears were ready to hear a weak, weary voice coming from Her Highness' bed, because I was deeply concerned for my overlord. I highly respect her, so the word Her Royal Highness is a colloquial pronoun that I often use when we are both alone, because Her Highness once said, Her Royal Highness is a colloquial term for members of the royal family of the overlords who were born only to the queen consort or the queens, not born from a royal concubine like her. In this matter, I, who had always been strict in traditions and customs, argued with her unreasonably. You are my Royal Highness. Why can't I call you Your Highness? You are so stubborn, my dear. Her Royal Highness only smiled lightly. In that case, only two of us could hear it. I don't want anyone to gossip about not being modest. Yes, Your Highness. At that time, I accepted the words readily, feeling very happy that Her Highness had quickly indulged me like never before. Today the weather is fine, Her Royal Highness said, smiling lightly. I want to walk and see the garden, Maypad. I think the weather is a bit cold and humid. Your Highness has just recovered from your illness less than a day ago. Would it be okay for you to go outside and take a walk? I uttered a gentle voice as I secretly looked at her beautiful, elegant face, which now is pale and almost bloodless, and I felt very sorry for her. For the 3 years I spent in close service with Her Highness, there were very few days when she was well and not sick with some illness. One way or another, today Her Highness has fought hard to recover from her illness, hoping to be able to stroll outside for a bit. But she was easily displeased by me like that. But if you wore a thick robe and a little scarf around your neck, you might be able to walk around here for a moment, Your Highness. Are you pleasing me? Princess M smiled softly. Did you eat something wrong? Today you seem to change your mind easily. I just don't want to see your highness staring blankly out the window like that all day, your highness. I consciously swallowed the word pity in my throat because her highness is at such a high position that I can't easily, presumptuously use those words on her. By the way, your highness has been bedridden for many days. It would be better if you could go out and stretch your legs a bit, wouldn't it, your highness? Hmm. Her Majesty answered my words briefly, as always when I am in a happy mood. When I heard this, I hurriedly prepared thick, long sleeved apparel and quickly put it on top of the thin garment that she was wearing. As for the neck scarf, Her Highness carefully selected it herself from dozens of hand knitted silk scarves I regularly knit and have become part of her collection. Today, Her Highness is in better health and more potent than every day. It was evident from how she stood up and walked with ease, with her arm only loosely wrapped around my arm, not putting any weight on it to support herself like some days. Our walking has begun at a road paved with large grey stones, stretched out from the back of the central palace, leading us to the waterfront pavilion, where at this time there was many large and small lotus flowers, showing off their colours until the pond was full. Along the way there were many trees, for example, along the lattice roof built along the path, Easter lily vines intertwined, showing off their white flowers mixed with lank clusters that now emit a flower scent. There were two large lamudon trees on both sides of the road. The smell of the yellow lamudon flowers was in full bloom until Her Highness even asked, Maypad? Her large round eyes resembling clear crystals, now sparkling like a girl's eyes. Have you ever played with lamdon flower petals and strung them into garlands to tie into your hairband? I let out a smile as I recalled memories from my youth. Yes, I strung them better than anyone else, Your Highness. Can you do it for me later? Her Royal Highness spoke, smiling brightly in a way not seen often. Your Highness, I reached out to support Her Royal Highness, walking much more slowly than at the beginning. This evening, I will ask the Chamberlain to climb up and bring down the flowers for me to make into a garland to present to your Royal Highness. Why do you need to climb until you are tired? She coughed a bit as she tried to say the following sentence. I saw lamudon flower falling all over the ground. Flowers that fall on the ground are not worthy of your highness. It was the first time I disagreed with Her Royal Highness so seriously that I couldn't help but put on a solemn expression. She saw this and could only laugh before she coughed again. I couldn't help but worry. Okay, I'll wait for the lamudon garland from Maypad then. Oh, but today we did better go back to the palace. Your Highness been coughing too much. I want to walk and sit at the waterfront pavilion. Let's come again tomorrow. Please, Your Highness, I said while slowly walking over and caressing Her Highness' extremely fragile body recklessly. By this time, Her Highness was noticeably coughing more. Mm, let's go back. Her beautiful face was gloomy at this time, her two shoulders wrapped together as if the coldness was touching her heart. I tightened my embrace towards her, intending to transfer as much warmth to her as possible. We both walked back to the central palace with such strange gestures that it took quite a while. Is this your lamdon garland? Her Royal Highness asked when I brought the most beautiful strung lamdan flower garland on a gold tray and presented it next to her bed. Yes, is it beautiful? As I said. I smiled as brightly as I did whenever I talked with Her Highness. It might be because Her Highness had spoken to me with a serious, beautiful smile, She also meant to smile often. Hmm. Her Highness answered shortly and reached out her hand to pick up a garland of lamatan petals that I had cut off one petal from each flower, then used the rest of the flowers to string together into a long shape like a bracelet. Her Highness examined closely before putting it around her wrist and holding it up to show me with her bright face. Is it beautiful to wear it like this? As you wish, Your Highness. I bowed my head slightly. Whatever I have given you, you can do as you wish, Your Highness. Can you string one for me every day? Of course I can, Your Highness. Maypad has been very kind today, she said, smiling happily. What did I miss? Not at all, Your Highness. I naturally bowed down at the side of her bed. I'm just telling the truth. Get up, I'm only teasing you. Yes, Your Highness. Today, I'd like to listen to Madan Badha, Her Royal Highness said, handing over a dialogue play from King Ram, 6 royal writings, to me before reclining her back on her pillow. Please read it to me, Maypad. Yes, Your Highness. I took the handy-sized book and flipped it to the page, marked with dried flowers. Her Royal Highness chose fresh flowers for me to dry and apply perfume, to bake bookmarks for many of her favorite books. I began to read her favorite chapter in a soft and sweeter voice than ever. Love is like a disease. Make your eyes darken, unheard and unseen. Any intervenes. Love is as a young bull, furiously imprisoned. It will jump out of the fold and refuse to stay in prison. Even if it was tied, it will pull with all force, more forbidden, more crazy, not thinking about physical pain. Maypad? Yes, Your Highness. I stopped reading as soon as I heard the gentle voice of Her Highness. Are you sick or hurt somewhere? Not at all. Her Highness laughed happily. I just wanted to talk. What do you want to talk about? I just want to ask what you think about this poem. I unconsciously, it was as if my heart was beating violently, like never before, when she raised her eyes to meet Her Royal Highness' large, light colored eyes. I don't know how I should think. Did you just read it out loud to me, Padmika? Her Highness spoke while shaking her head until I couldn't bear it and had to argue in my defense. I didn't just read it loud to Your Highness, but I have doubted every time I read it. What are your doubts? Her Royal Highness said, raising her head arrogantly. Can you tell me about it? I wonder if the power of love might not be as strong and dangerous as the poem says. Do you know? Her Royal Highness smiled softly. That love, if you knew it, you might not say this. The poison of love may imprison and keep you locked in emptiness and uncertainty for the rest of your life. What's even more frightening is that love can often happen without choosing the person and conditions. Her Royal Highness brought her face close to my face as she spoke with a subtle voice. I have seen it with my own eyes and have been able to tell you about it. This is POV of Princess M. After Maypad served closely with me for her 7th year, the image I often saw when I woke up was the image of a young woman with her head buried in her arm on the bed where my feet were. No matter how many times I have told her to go and sleep on the bed, neatly done next to the bed, doesn't seem to be effective. Every early morning, it became my duty to wake her up, to go to sleep properly, for I was often startled before the sky had even dawned. I pretended to sleep until she agreed to go to bed, feeling so sleepy. Then I chose to lie down and look at Padmika's sleeping face while waiting for the first rays of the sun to shine. Padmika's slender face as she fell asleep resembled that of a girl, as no power shining through her dark, sharp eyes like when she was awake. Her steady breathing lulls me to a feeling of calm and freedom from agitation. That moment seemed like the only moment I could overcome the chronic cough that bothered me every moment. Cause I didn't want the annoying sound of my broken cuff to wake the girl up from her slumber. Are you awake, Your Highness? She always greets me with the same repeating sentence every morning. How are you feeling this morning? Are you sick or hurt anywhere? I'm fine. I too often prepare such answers as if they were mandatory sentences. Nevertheless, it wasn't long before my unloving body repeatedly declared that I was lying. If it wasn't as hot as a lump of coal that had just been extinguished, it often started with a ripple of coughing. Sometimes it got worse, and I became dizzy, couldn't stand up and walk, unable to move to the point that she had to call a royal doctor to look at my condition at that palace. Going around like that is like the cycle of insects. It was as if I had become unaccustomed to my illness. Nevertheless, I hate it to the point of cursing it every day. I'm not cursing the disease that besets me. I just cursed myself. Why don't I just die and put an end to the matter? Unfortunately, I had accidentally uttered these words into Padmika's ears one evening when I felt a chill deep in my bones. The result was dark eyes that shone with regret and a sea of tears flowing from Padmika that never seemed to stop easily. So much so that I was forced to tell a big lie. An endlessly sick person like me doesn't die easily, Maypad. Even though her crying had stopped, it turned out to be arousing her feelings of worry even more. She treated me like a fragile piece of glass that would break any time. Ironically, at that time, my body suddenly became weaker than ever before until everything Padmika had been worried about became appropriate. One morning, I woke up with pain all over my body, as if thousands of needles were stabbing all over my body. Even if I fought and endured it for a long time, such symptoms do not quickly go away. Still, when the symptoms subsided, I could only stare at the Lamadan bracelet on my wrist that someone had meticulously strung together to give to me every day. After carefully consideration that afternoon, I called Princess Padmika to meet me in the dressing room. A velvet box beside me contained some precious jewelry I had received from the king. Some were my collection. Nevertheless, the only accessory I chose to take out of the box was that gold ring, decorated with topaz and diamonds. I grant it to you. I spoke up as Padmika sat with legs folded back to one side beside my knees. Excuse me? She still had difficulty understanding things as usual. Granted. This time, I didn't wait for her to understand or repeat any questions. I reached out, grabbed her thin hand, and carefully put the ring on her right ring finger. Just granting. I insist so. For what reason did you give me the precious ring, Your Highness? Her elegant face was still full of questions, as usual. To exchange with this Lamadan petal bracelet, I said, waving my wrist that was wearing a homemade flower bracelet made by the person in front of me. Because they are similarly bright yellow. This is POV of Princess Padmika. Lately, I haven't slept much, for Her Highness was sicker than ever, even though she forced herself to not even half a word to ask for help. I also realized it because I had served her closely for a long time. Later in the evening, I read to her until she fell asleep. I often had to reach out and touch her ankles because I was so concerned for her. If her body temperature were average, I would accidentally feel it until I fell asleep in an unusual gesture. Still, if her body is too warm or too hot, I will quickly offer her the medicine that the royal doctor had firmly instructed her to consume before I can comfortably close my eyes. My 7 years in the Central Palace, it has always been familiar to me with the smell of Her Royal Highness medicine. That strange, pungent aroma made me feel at ease and put me to sleep, confident that she would be safe under those magical medicines. A few months ago, for reasons I can't figure out, Her Royal Highness gave me a gold ring decorated with topaz and diamonds. Nevertheless, it made me smile, and it's a smile that's very difficult to hide. Her Highness wanted to exchange it for the flower garland I presented to her every night. Not only that, but she also gave a large box jewelry set of topaz surrounded by diamonds, along with several dozen rai of land in Samat Prakan to me. I just wanted to give. Please don't displease me. Because of Her Highness' wish, I must be the one to respond to the utmost. Nevertheless, this time the signal pointed in a direction that was not very good. I couldn't bear it any more and had to inform the royal doctor about this matter and give her more medicine and invite Her Highness to stay in the hospital for treatment for quite a while. Soon, Her Highness' condition improved noticeably to the point where she could return to the palace for treatment. I, who had always followed her, was relieved that Her Highness was in such better health. Maypad, Your Highness, when will you stop worrying? Your Highness, you are much better now. I don't have any worries anymore. Then, why can't you lie down to let me see for once? Can't you? I beg your pardon, Your Highness. I would like to look at Your Highness after you slept for a moment. Then I can fall asleep. Thank you for the Ramadan flower garlands over these many years. When I was in the hospital, you still string one for me daily. It's my pleasure, Her Royal Highness. Her Royal Highness reached out her hand and stroked my hair for the first time sweetly and gently. Have a good dream. I smile. It was the most worry free smile I have had in a few months because tonight Her Royal Highness looked healthy. There is nothing unusual to worry about. I had the deepest sleep in months. I was falling asleep and dreaming that the two of us could walk together smoothly to the waterfront pavilion without any obstacles before waking up with the first light of the day, along with the cold ankles that I had touched before falling asleep. Such a cold body woke me up with a fraction of a second. Your Highness? My voice trembled as I pressed my palm against Her Highness' wrist, which was now like a steady, unmoving pulse. Your Highness? My heart began to disturb until I couldn't stand it, until I saw with my own eyes that her beautiful face was now devoid of even the slightest trace of blood. Nevertheless, I still call her Her Highness out like a person completely unconscious. Your Highness? Until I realized it before my own eyes. Even the Ramadan petal bracelet was still fresh and shining brightly yellow, like it was in the early evening of last night. Nevertheless, the owner of the flower bracelet had already passed away and never returned. My tears flowed like the Ramadan flowers falling all over the ground. I can only bow down at Her Royal Highness' feet while calling out her name in such a sobbing voice like everything was lost. Your Highness? You're not hurt nor in pain anywhere, right? This letter is written by Your Highness to Padmika. To Padmika, believe it or not, I'm writing this letter to comfort you. For I, myself, know my body better than anyone else. Consider it very fortunate that such a fragile body finally chose to disintegrate in such a short time. However, it's unfortunate that we haven't had time to spend as much time together as I ever wanted to. Don't shed more tears for me than necessary. Even if I die, it's not as much suffering and pain as I was still breathing. Continue to live your life strong, even if it's not for yourself. Assume that you live for others, or even to live for me. Can you, Padmika? After reading this letter, if you want to destroy it, you can do it with my permission. If you just want to keep it where no one can find it. It's not different from the feelings that I had only with you, that I keep hidden, most profound, in a place that only I can find. If you feel the same, please wear the ring I have given you on your finger. If you don't feel anything, put the ring back in the velvet box where it used to be. That is all I asked of you. Please take care of your health. Love. Arphanomas. Few months later. Thank you so much, Your Majesty, Princess Padmika said to the king of Saftarat while looking intently at the atmosphere surrounding the Bua palace that he had planned to build for her. It seems like the palace is too big for me. Is it too big? I think it's too small. The king spoke while laughing. Your Majesty is very good to me. I see you're very sad right now, Padmika. After Princess M passed away, you have changed, as if you are not the same Padmika. He met his adoptive sister's sharp eyes while swallowing his saliva. I just want to find something that will make you smile. I can't remember the last time I saw you smile. I may have to be imprisoned by certain feelings for the rest of my life, Your Majesty. Hmm? The king lifted his brow high in question. I don't understand what you said. Forget it, Your Majesty. Princess Padmika raised her beautiful face high. I also can't understand myself. But do you like it or not? The king said with a smile. I chose to build it to resemble Princess M's central palace as much as possible. I like it, and I think it's very similar. Princess Padmika smiled faintly. It's just a pity that the Bua Palace doesn't have various medicine scents like the Central Palace. Oh gosh, it turns out you like the smell of medicine, sister. Yes, the scent of the medicine indicates that Her Royal Highness still resides somewhere in the palace. Princess Padmika pursed her lips to hold back the tears that filled her eyes for quite a while before she could utter her following sentence. Can't be gone forever like right now. Hasn't gone forever like now. That's it for this chapter, guys, and I'll see you next with another special chapter. Thank you.